Welcome back to Carlo Prusa MMA. Today we have a very special guest. My guest today is making his debut to Gamebred Bareknuckle. He's taking on Mr. Kevin Lee November 15th, going down Biloxi, Mississippi. Going to be a stacked show. He is the Spider, Mr. Saul Almeida. Spider, you've done a lot of mixed martial arts, a lot of combat sports in your career, from between boxing, done a lot of MMA, fought in the World Series of Fighting, fought on Bellator. What made you want to take the gloves off and try this new bare knuckle MMA phenomenon?
Yeah, it's been a long road. I've done so much, and it was just a good opportunity. That came up. Good friends with Jorge, and he presented the offer and had a good opponent with a decent name. So, we jumped on it.
You've been at this journey for a very long time. Your earliest recorded contest on Tapology is 2008. So many people watch mixed martial arts, combat sports in this day and age, but I think very few realize 20 years ago, man, this was considered like the wild, wild west. At one time you had senators calling it human cockfighting. It wasn't legal everywhere. When you first started getting into this, your first few amateur fights, pro fights, do you have any horror stories of maybe fighting in crazy situations outside bars, mystery opponents? Do you have anything nuts?
Unfortunately, no. I started. Yeah, my first pro fight was 2008, and it was crazy back then. But that was I never went amateur, so I just had my first pro fight October 2008. Went from there. I started my career 7-0. Went all the way to like 12-1. And interestingly enough, it's crazy because this fight is a bare knuckle fight. But interestingly enough, I've never had a street fight in my life. I've kind of always wanted to, just to see, how if I could defend myself. I'm sure I can, but it would just be interesting to have one. But I've never had a street fight, so I guess getting punched in the face bare knuckle is going to be a first. So I don't know what to expect, but I guess it's new for both of us, me and Kevin. I mean, I don't know if he had street fights. I'm guessing maybe he did, but it's a new opportunity. But yeah, back then was crazy. We fought everybody. Nowadays a little different, but you know, uh, you made weight. They threw a name. I was game for everybody. I fought a lot of good guys. Never been scared of anybody. I show up. And I come to fight.
How did you get your start into this crazy world of combat sports?
Uh, Basically, I moved from Brazil with my parents, and as soon as I got here, I was 8 years old, and my mom put me in karate. So I started doing karate and jiu-jitsu at the age of 8. Got my karate black belt at the age of 11. Wrestled in high school. So I had the same coach for 15 years, basically. And when I was about 16 or 15, 16, I told him and my brother that I wanted to do MMA. And we basically trained for a few years while I was wrestling in high school to have my first pro fight. And as soon as I turned 19, I had my first pro fight. I never I had the opportunity when I was 18, but I was still in high school. There was a few months, but if I did take an MMA fight, I couldn't continue wrestling. But so I just finished the wrestling season. Then I got into to MMA, and I had one of my coaches for like 15 years. And then I started training. I met a lot of people that I cross trained. I went over to California. Black House trained with Anderson Silva. His manager Ed Soares was my manager for a little while, and that's when the doors started opening towards other opportunities that I got.
I think one of them we got talking off right away. You never got to have the opportunity to fight in the UFC, but you were involved in one of the biggest moments and the biggest stories in the UFC. Obviously, being Jose Aldo's translator during that crazy Mayweather Aldo, or not Mayweather, McGregor Aldo World Tour. How did that all develop for you? How did you get that opportunity?
Yeah, that was one of the most interesting things I've did. It was like priceless moments. The experiences, it was like I said, priceless. And basically, I met Aldo around 2013 at a Bellator event, and We talked, and I met his coach, Andre Pederneiros, some of his training partners, Marlon Sandro, and a couple others, and always kept in contact. And then he came to Boston, I think, for a Conor McGregor fight. I think Conor fought Dennis Seaver in Boston. And when he got here, he hit me up, and I met up with him. And the UFC was doing some interviews, so I was helping him with some interviews. And then it just went from there. But when uh, when they did the world tour, it started in Rio, and then it went to Los Angeles, Las Vegas. Then they came to Boston. So he hit me up again. He's like, "Hey, I'm in Boston." So I went to the theater here where they had the press conference, and they did an interview, and the UFC asked me to do some translating work. So I did like Aldo Arahawani. We did an interview. Then I did a press conference, and from there, actually, as soon as I was done, the UFC asked me backstage if I wanted to keep going and do the next two stops, which was New York and London. And I told them, absolutely. They said if I had my ID there, I didn't have it because they were going to take a private jet to New York. So I was like, I can get it at home. So I went home. They got me, I think, a train the next morning to New York. So when I got there, they had like a driver waiting for me. I met up with Aldo. Then we did the New York part of the conference. And then from there, we took a jet to Canada, which was pretty cool. It was my first time in a private jet. So it was me on one, me Aldo, his coach, his trainer, and then on the other jet was Conor McGregor. And then we flew to Canada for that part of the tour. And then from there, I was supposed to come to Boston, but Aldo asked if I wanted to continue with them, and I asked the UFC, and they're like, "If you can come, we'd love for you to come with us." So after that was London and Dublin, and Dublin was the craziest. They had like 3,000 fans. Uh, they was all screaming. So what was I gonna say? Actually, so the Dublin conference was one of the most iconic. Like that, Connor steals the belt from him, and it's funny because we're upstairs in the room before coming down, and I told Aldo like you're at the last stop. Just go all out. When you're out there, they ask you the first question. Tell them that you're the king of Dublin, and see how it goes. So we go down. They ask him a question, and he's like, I came here. I brought the sun with me. It always rains. I'm the king of Dublin. So as soon as I translated that, and Connor heard it, like he went crazy, and he jumped over, got the belt, and that's when all that craziness happened. But it was pretty cool experience. I've had a few of these experiences, and I did it. But after the conference, the Dublin, like 10 days from that day, I had a fight for World Series of Fighting. So me doing it was like, is it gonna be worth the opportunity, like to do it? Like I'll train along the way with Aldo, and when fight time comes, I'll be ready. And everything ended up working out. I won the fight. I fought Chris Foster at Foxwoods, but it was one of those opportunities that you can't pass up. So that tour was pretty crazy, and I don't regret anything.
What were Aldo and McGregor like behind the scenes? Did they have any run-ins that were not videotaped or anything that you saw?
Aldo was pretty chill, always having fun, joking around, and every time Connor passed by him, everything you see on camera, that's the way he is off camera. Like he'll call him names, he'll laugh, he'll like try to joke around, like call him names and stuff. But basically, what you see on camera, outside of camera, he's the same way. He tries to get in Aldo's mind, Aldo's head, and Aldo is just cool, calm, collected. Jokes around, like tries to have the most fun he can, and doesn't really worry about it.
You could have the opportunity to fight multiple times in Bellator during a time where, it was kind of new to the sport. What was that experience like? How did you enjoy fighting for that promotion?
Bellator was awesome. They treated me well. Uh, I had my first fight for them 2010. I fought a kid that fought for the UFC, Tateki Matsuda. So the way had my first fight, they had an open tryout for Bellator. It was their first open tryout. It was held at Mark Delagrati's Seatong Gym in Mass, Boston. And funny enough, when I got there for the tryout, I wasn't training there at the time. So I got there for the tryout, and then they pulled me aside to the corner. I think it was Sam Kaplan, the matchmaker, and he was telling me like that Bjorn Rebney, uh, they were talking about having me fight on Bellator, but I think they reached out to my coach, but I was like, I never heard anything, like it never got to me. And they're like, yeah, well, we were trying to set you up to fight Taseki. So basically, they told me right then and there that I was gonna be the winner of the tryout, and I was like, okay. And so basically, I was trying out, seeing everybody try out, knowing that I was gonna be the winner of the tryout. So I did the tryout, and they picked me at the end. I ended up having the fight with Taseki. Then I won that fight, and then I fought probably another 4 times for them. One of them was a tournament alternate bout. So if one of the featherweights fell off on the tournament, I would have been the first go. Since I won my fight, I fought Andrew Fisher, which was a prospect from Europe. So I beat him. So I was like first in line if anybody got injured. So my last Bellator fight was a win. That was against Andrew Fisher, 2014. But it was awesome. The staff, they always treated me pretty nice, and fighting for the Bellator was pretty cool.
Several years ago, you made that transition from mixed martial arts to professional boxing. What went into that decision? Why did you feel like that was the move for you?
So basically, I fought for promotion CS MMA, and they also had CS boxing. And I've always liked boxing. I've always liked like just throwing hands and with the big gloves. And I wanted to try out a couple, and I knew it wasn't gonna affect my MMA record or anything because I didn't want to follow like be a world champion boxer. So I took my first boxing fight was actually a no contest because I got headbutted. I was winning the first couple rounds, and that was a no contest. So I took another one, and then they paid me like 1,000 or 2,000, and it was like to basically spar a few rounds. That was pretty good for me and didn't affect anything I did with MMA. But as it kept going on, just it doesn't like I only fought like basically a lot of undefeated guys, good prospects, and boxing. You know how it is. Like if you don't knock them out, you're not gonna win a decision. And I guess as time went on, like even like my brother talking to me, I guess I regretted it a little bit. I shouldn't have taken uh, as many boxing fights as I did. Um, One thing, like I pride myself, like I've never been knocked out. There's a couple stoppages due to cuts. I think 3 fights, and then there's 2 fights where I went to another state and they put another corner in my corner and they threw the towel because I think it was like people that knew the other team. But like I've never been of all the boxing fights, I've never been knocked out. So it's all like due to cuts and stuff. But still, in a small part of me regrets doing it. But it's one of those things I can't take back. I take what I can get, like the experience that I took from it. But I guess I wish I didn't take as many as I did.
You made your return to mixed martial arts earlier this year, took on Nick Fiore, another former UFC guy. Fought Calvin Cater's promotion, Combat Zone. What was the decision to move back to mixed martial arts?
Well, MMA was always my thing. Like that's since 2008. Boxing was like a hobby basically, and I did it for fun and because I liked it. But MMA was always the thing, and I came back. Like the pandemic took a lot of years out. I think I was out for 3 years. I came back. I fought Giannetti for the Cage Titans lightweight title. And then I had a cut in the second round, which I took. I had it in training and took the stitches out on a Monday, the week of the fight. So that cut opened up in the second round, and it was a 5-round fight. And it was a 5-round contest. He took the decision. Then the opportunity came when I was in Vegas training with Masvidal to fight Nick for Calvin Show for the title, and I jumped on the opportunity. But that didn't go my way. But for some reason, like, I have 34 fights. That was the only fight that I can look and say I've won and lost, but I've never lost in that manner. Like, something happened that I was just off that day. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, I wasn't nervous. I was calm. Like, usually I'm a little nervous, butterflies, and then you get in there and it's all over. But for this fight, I had no emotion. It was very weird. Like I said, like 34 fights, win or lose. I've never gotten like beat up. And I feel like this fight I got beat up, and it's just one of those bad nights. I shook it off. You take it on the chin, move on. But it's something that had never happened to me before, and it was kind of weird. So I don't know. It's just I didn't show up that night. So I told my brother, like that was it. I've done a lot. I fought for a lot of good promotions, a lot of good opponents, and it was time to, like, call it. I had a good career, did a lot of good stuff. And that was fighting. Like, if there's opportunities that presents itself to, like, train with other fighters and stuff like that, I'd do it. But I kind of call it a day over there. But then the opportunity with Masvidal showed up, and the money, the opponent, everything. That it seemed like a good opportunity, so I kind of jumped on that.
Where were we? Where were you, and who called you when you found out that you were being offered Kevin Lee?
So I was in Vegas for 5 months with Masvidal. We were training there for the boxing match with Diaz, and I told him about bare knuckle, and he's like, "Yo, bro, nah, don't do that." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." And then when I got back, I think it was right after the Fury fight, I hit him up and I'm like, if you have any uh, open spots on the next show, please let me know. I'd love to give it a try. I know what you said, but it'd be like a one time thing, depending how it goes, but mostly a one time thing. Good opportunity. And he said the show was the card was full, but he did have a spot on Island Fights for MMA, and I told him that I wasn't interested. MMA was I was all set with that unless like I said, a good opportunity came forward. But basically with that I was all set. And then I believe 3 days later, which must have been, let's say, 3 weeks ago, he called me and he's like, "Yo, you said you wanted to be on the card. I got an opponent. If you want it, you gotta let me know. Kevin Lee." And I was like, "All right, let me talk to my brother. I'll give you a call back." And at first, my brother wasn't really into it, didn't really support it. So I had to call. I kind of did what he said. I went with him. So I called Jorge. I'm like, "Thank you." My brother's not with it, and at night I was like, I'm gonna regret this. Let me see if I can change his mind. So the next day I talked to my brother, talked him into it, called Jorge. I'm like, "Fight's still good?" He's like, "Yeah, you want it? You gotta let me know now. I'm gonna call Dean." I'm like, "All right, let's do it." And it was done right there. It was done about 3 weeks ago.
When you first started getting into combat sports back in 2008, would you ever envision a sanctioned bare knuckle organization existing?
Um, Maybe because back then I saw a lot of promotions, or maybe it was underground, that had like bare knuckle. Uh, my brother actually, because I think when I was 15, 16, he was like 20 or so. And I even told him, like, don't I remember you fighting bare knuckle? And he's like, no, it was like no gloves, but it was like slaps. Like, you couldn't punch. It was like MMA, but with slaps. but I think there was like some underground here in Boston. I think if I'm not mistaken, Jorge Rivera fought like Tim Sylvia or something. There was like some underground fights. But yeah, I guess if I look at it back, like as the sport was growing, like 2009, 10, 11, 12, um, yeah, I probably couldn't think of like bare knuckle MMA event being big. But here we are.
So overall, what do you think of Kevin Lee as an opponent?
It's pretty interesting. He's fought a bunch of good guys in the UFC. He had his peak. Even though he's probably not what he used to be, he's still, dangerous. He's still Kevin Lee, and I'm expecting the best fighter to show up. He just had this tune-up fight, the win over the weekend, and it's a good name. Like I said, it was a good opportunity to fight a guy that people know, and it's not like I'm not a guy that people do. Obviously, he's a more well-known name, but I'm a guy that a lot of people know too. Like for everything that I've done and like people that I've trained with, so I think it's gonna be a good fight, and we'll see how it goes. Just I guess I'll train the same way for MMA. It's bare knuckle, but I don't know. Maybe I'll put like some wraps and like fake the light punching and like kind of just to see. But it's gonna be a little weird, but we'll make it happen.
So when you look at this card, there's a lot of fighters from the Boston area on this card. You got yourself, you got Slippery Pete, you got Charles Rosa, you got Randy Costa, one of the headliners for this. What's it like to be fighting on a card with so much Boston in it?
Oh, it's awesome. We're gonna show up, represent. Uh, Randy, when as soon as he knew I was on the card, he was like pumped. He's like, "Let's go!" Randy's from the area. Pete, I trained with him down at Tong with Mark Delagrati in the gym. Charles Rosa, a guy I know too. I've trained with him back in down in ATT. So it's gonna be good. We're gonna go up. We're gonna show up, put on a show for everybody. Four Boston guys. We're gonna do it the Boston way.
Now, overall, obviously, knowing Jorge, you were aware of the bare knuckle promotion. Every time these guys do a show, man, the names are getting bigger and bigger. It's getting more attention. It's really starting to blow up. I mean, they started a concept that really never existed. I mean, sure, you had your bare knuckle boxing, but bare knuckle MMA, they were the first to really originate this idea. Do you think this promotion could get really, really big?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a promotion that is just gonna growing and get big, and especially with the MMA aspect. Um, BKFC, they're doing their thing. I think if, for example, if they presented me bare knuckle boxing, it could be any opponent. I don't think I would do that one. Just straight boxing, bare knuckle, it's just not for me. Just doesn't matter the amount of money. It's not worth it. Some guys will do it. Just, but the MMA aspect is, makes it interesting. So I think he's doing it right. He's got a great team behind him. It's only going to grow from here. So I see bigger shows coming up, bigger names joining the promotion, and I see a lot of success for them.
I think when the average fan hears bare knuckle mixed martial arts, right away they're thinking, oh, wow, crazy knockouts, no gloves, bare knuckle. But in reality, I think bare knuckle MMA really favors the ground. Obviously going for takedowns, jiu-jitsu, wrestling makes it a lot harder to defend it. Is that something that you've kept to mind or thought about before this contest a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Without the gloves, I guess it makes it easier for like chokes and to like get a hold of somebody without the wraps being tight and the gloves and just closing the hand. But just bare knuckle is basically like doing jujitsu, without gloves, but you can punch. So I think in the grappling aspect, it does make it a little bit easier. If you're a guy that like that's very good with like chokes and stuff like that you need grips. So I think it favors me. But my opponent Kevin Lee is also a grappler, so it probably favors him too. So he's gonna like it. I'm probably gonna like it. It's gonna be interesting.
So you mentioned that you got to train with Jorge Masvidal, Jorge Capetillo for their last boxing match, last man standing, Diaz versus Masvidal. Overall now it comes out that Jorge was a little hurt during the fight. He had to fight southpaw against Nate. A lot of people think Jorge won the contest. What did you think of his performance? What did you think of the event?
I thought the event was phenomenal, sold out. The arena was awesome. All the fans, everybody showed up. The event itself was a success. And Jorge, to me, my opinion, he looked phenomenal. Like he was going to the body, southpaw, which we were sparring southpaw. He was sparring southpaw with me for probably 2 to 3 months. So it wasn't something that he switched like in the middle, like in the beginning of the fight, or something he did a couple weeks before the fight. Like he was sparring like 2.5 months out, like southpaw, and he's like, people are not gonna expect this, and he was landing uh, from southpaw position, working the body, working body head movement. Like so, he was looking really really good as you saw in the fight. uh, he pressured him a lot, landed the harder shots. Sometimes he'd stand in the corner, like blocked a lot of shots, but then he moved. So, I don't know what the judges saw, but I thought overall Jorge won. I would have gave him, what was it, 10 rounds? I would have given him like 6-4, something like that. But, the way the judges had it was like 8-2 or something like that, or like all three. It was something crazy. But to me, he looked great. Like he put in the work. We were running every day. Wake up 5:30 in the morning, 6 a.m. We run 3 miles every day. Saturday we go to the mountains. Monday, Wednesday, Friday we spar at Capetillo, and then we got the rest. So like he was putting in work, like 5 months. I got there for him was early February, and we did February, March, April, May, June, because the fight kept getting extended. I went from April to June to July, and he never complained. He always worked hard, and I believe they showed in the fight. I believe people were impressed. They over delivered. People said it was going to be this and that, but at the end of the fight, everybody's like, "Wow, it was a great fight." They put on a show for 10 rounds. Nobody gassed. The technique was on point. So overall, I think the show was a success, and everybody was happy.
Obviously in the buildup of that one, things got pretty crazy, especially at a press conference in Miami. Big brawl broke out. Capetillo was getting into it with kill shot. A lot of stuff happened that day. It got pretty nuts. How did that affect training camp?
To be honest, it didn't affect much at all. I didn't go to Miami. I stayed in Vegas at the house. So they went for that, and then they came back. They got back right back to sparring on Monday. So it didn't really affect them. It happened there. It got some videos, promoted the fight. It wasn't nothing planned. Like it just, happened, and things got heated. But, they at that night, like everything was already over. They flew back to Vegas, continued training. So, it was just things that happened in a moment. But, at least nobody got injured, nobody got hurt, and we kept going on with the fight.
So many people watch mixed martial arts, combat sports, bare knuckle this day and age. It's crazy. And, I think they look at the big guys. I think they look at the Masvidals, the McGregors, the John Joneses, and they're like, wow, what a great life it is to be a professional fighter. That just seems amazing. Little do they know, man, when you're battling it on the regional scene and smaller promotions, you're not making millions of dollars doing that. A lot of guys have 9-to-5 jobs just to fund the training. They have kids, they have wives, they have families to support. Then you need to spend a bunch of time every single day training, getting punched in the face, trying to take out guys who want it just as bad as you do to get to the next level. Have you stayed through the sacrifices for all these years, man? What's made you keep kicking and punching?
I just think I'm kind of addicted to it. I've always said I could be a multimillionaire. I think I'd still fight. It's one of those like I think one of my favorite fighters ever is BJ Penn, and I think he came from money, and he still fought. Like that's was in his DNA. He loved it. Like he was just scrap kind of guy. Like always fought, was a world champion, and I just loved it. Loved training. I was able to. I was lucky enough that I had the support that I could train, fight, travel, and I've always stayed with it. I never gave up. Just loved doing it. I remember that fight you mentioned, 2008, my first pro fight. I got $100 for it, which probably didn't even go to me. I probably paid my trainer at the gym, and then my second fight was like $300, which 200 went to the gym and like 100 went to me. So regional shows in the beginning we're fighting for a few $100, and I remember my first fight that I made like 1,000. I was so happy. It was like my seventh fight or something, and to me it was like big money back then. And some guys are still making 1,000, 2,000, and just grinding. But if it's almost like an investment in yourself, and it could pay off, it could not pay off. So, but at the end of the day, you have to have a plan B. You can't just some guys don't, and it works out. Some guys do, and it's all about how you see yourself doing it. But to me, I just loved it. I could never be away from the sport. Like fighting, even like when I stop fighting, I'm still gonna think about it. But I just love it, man. It's just in me.
Do you think even when you're done competing professionally, do you feel like in one way or another you'll still be around in the sport doing something in some sort of capacity?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Um, Even if it's like working with guys that are fighting or training people, maybe not like having a gym and training a lot of people. I don't know if that's for me, but maybe like train specific people or train like a group of guys. I like to be involved and something like that. But and always be like training and stuff. But yeah, I love to be involved, give back, and right now, while I still can, still I'd be down for like opportunities where, for example, last year I did back-to-back camps with Jake Paul, Logan Paul for their fights, and then I did Masvidal for this year, and then like 2018 I did Dustin Poirier, and my first one was 2010 with Anderson Silva. So stuff like that, I'd always be interested in doing, working with guys like that. But yeah, I definitely be around the sport.
The Paul brothers, they get some flack from some people. Some people don't like the whole idea of this whole influencer boxing crossover. But, for me, I was kind of like whatever with it at first. But, it's impressive what they're doing. It really is. You have to put your hat off to them. You've seen them behind the scenes. How serious do these guys take this?
From what I see, and I can tell you, like a guy like Jake Paul, that dude puts in the work. Like he trains hard, he works hard. He, in a way, people have to stop calling him like, yeah, he's an influencer, but like saying like, oh, he's just a YouTuber. Like no, like a boxer, any boxer you see their first 10 fights, it's tune-up fights. They're fighting to get experience. The only thing is, this guy is well known, and every fight he has, it's in front of the world. So people are gonna be like, "Oh, why don't you fight a real boxer? Like your first fight, you're a real boxer. Like you want to fight Canelo Alvarez? Like even like the 8, 9, 10th fight, he's building experience, and people say, oh, he's fighting old MMA fighters. Like not everybody can beat Anderson Silva or Nate Diaz. Like those they might not be in their prime, but those are tough fights. And for like that 6, 7 fight, to me that's a test. And he's a guy that like really works hard. He goes to the gym, goes to the track, does the workouts, the run. So I was really not surprised, but when he puts in the mind to do something, like he really does it. Like he has the nutrition, the strength and conditioning coach, the boxing coach. He's in the gym every day. So he's a guy that like really puts in work, and you have to respect because he loves it, and to me he's doing it the right way. And the thing is, if he fights a guy like, for example, Nate Diaz, people are gonna say Nate Diaz is past his prime. He should fight a real boxer. But then he calls out Canelo or like a boxer like that, and people are like, "Oh, you're gonna get beat up." So like, which is it? Like, who should he fight? People are always gonna talk, but at the end of the day, like he's doing what he's supposed to do, and people that are talking are just behind computers and keyboards, and they're not really doing anything, and he's out there at least doing it. And talking about Logan also is really dedicated to what he does, but his real craft to me is WWE. Like that guy is talented. Even like people are commenting like on his videos and stuff. Like they're like he was made for this. Like that's his thing. Like he did the boxing with Dylan Dennis for mostly for like the Prime card, and if an opportunity presents itself, he'll probably do it again. But WWE is his calling. Like he trains hard. He's a freak athlete. Very very talented. But they're treating me nice. They're pretty cool behind the scenes, and it's not everything that you see online. But I had a good time with both guys, both camps.
All right, so last question, my friend. In a perfect world, what is the outcome when you take on Kevin Lee, Gamebred Bareknuckle 8 in Biloxi, Mississippi?
Kevin Lee, November 15th. I take him down and I choke him out. I don't know if it's the first round or the second round, but that's the perfect outcome. Gamebred FC, November 15, Biloxi, Mississippi. I beat Kevin Lee. I take him out, and we'll see what happens next.
Awesome, Saul. Thank you so much for talking to me, my friend. Glad to see you get added on this card here, and really excited to cover you in Biloxi, man. I think it's going to be a fun fight.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it so much. It's going to be a great fight, and can't wait. And you'll see, it's going to be a fun one.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for us tonight. That is the Spider, Mr. Saul Almeida. I'm Carlo Prusa. Stick around, fight fans.